This video is meant to help you review for your Unit 4 test. It is not everything on the test, but it is just some helpful hints. For number 1, I have an inequality. The first thing I need to figure out is the slope for my inequality. So if I look here, I am going down 2, so my rise is negative 2, and I am going over 1, 2, 3, so my run is 3. My slope is negative 2/3. I am crossing the y-axis at negative 1, so my b is negative 1. Now, this is a solid line, so I know it has to be between less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, and we are shading below the below the y-intercept, so we are going to use less than or equal to. My final answer is y is less than or equal to negative 2/3 x minus 1. My next example is also an inequality, but this is an undefined line. Remember, undefined, that's the slope of a vertical line. So my slope is undefined. When that happens, your answer is going to look different from usual. Instead of using y, we are going to use x. Now, I'm shading to the left of x, so I'm going to use less than. My line is solid, so I'm going to underline it, less than or equal to, and I'm crossing the x-axis at negative 3. So x is less than or equal to negative 3. My next example is of a table, and you have two options when you have a table. Your first option is to stick with your slope formula. You can pick any 2 points from your table. So if I just pick the first 2, and you can set it up to find slope. So I would have 7 minus 5 over 2 minus 1, and we would get 2 over 1. Your other option to find slope is just to follow the pattern. My y's are going up by 2. My x's are going up by 1. So my rise over run is 2 over 1. The next thing you need to find is the y-intercept. You can use point slope form, or you can find where x is going to be 0. If you're going to use point slope form, you can again pick any point. So say I just use the first point. I would have y minus 5 equals 2 times x minus 1. Simplifying that down, we get 2x minus 2. And then all we have to do is add the 5. And y is 2x plus 3. That's your first option. Your second option is to find where x would be 0. If I follow the pattern for my x's, I have backwards. I have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the next one is 0. If I follow the pattern for my y's, I have 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, and my next would be 3. So b is 3. Remember, you can always check that in your calculator by pulling up your table. For number 4, you're given a slope and you're given a point. So you can either use point slope form, or you can use y equals mx plus b. For this example, I'm going to use point slope form. I'm going to plug in negative 2 for y1, negative 1 for my m, and 1 for x1. Now all we have to do is simplify. So I have negative x plus 1 minus a negative is the same thing as adding 2. Be careful with your signs. And then we subtract the 2 to get y equals negative x minus 1. If you prefer slope-intercept form, then you would plug in negative 2 for your y, you would plug in negative 1 for your slope, and you would plug in 1 for your x. We're looking for b. So negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. To get b by itself, we would add it over, and b is negative 1. Your answer would be y equals negative x minus 1. My next problem says that the line is parallel to y equals 4/3 x minus 2. When you're given that information, you're only going to look at the slope. My slope here is 4/3. Parallel, they're so tame, that's because their slope's the same, so we're just going to use a slope of 4/3. Now, this word origin. Origin is the point 0, 0. So if you think about it, that is also your y-intercept. You are crossing the y-axis at 0. So just from knowing that you're crossing through the origin, I know that b is 0. I could write this as y equals 4/3 x or y equals 4/3 x plus 0. Those mean the same thing. Now, you will also be given 2 points to find an equation, and when that happens, you have to start with your slope formula. For this problem, I have 10 minus 5 over 2 minus -3. So we get 5 over 5, which is 1. If I plug this into point slope, you can pick either point, but it's a really good idea to pick the one with both positives if possible. So I have y minus 10 equals 1 times x minus 2. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times -2 is -2. And all I have to do is add the 10. So y is x plus 8. If you prefer to use slope-intercept form, you may do so there as well. My last problem says that it's perpendicular to this equation and has an x-intercept of 7. Before we find slope, you have to get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3x and divide everything by 2. And y is 7 over 2 minus 3 over 2x. My slope here is -3 over 2. So my perpendicular slope is the opposite reciprocal, which is 2/3. Now, x-intercept does not mean b. X-intercept means you're crossing the x-axis at 7, so y is 0. So I have a point, I have a slope. I can plug it into point slope or slope-intercept. Since I did point slope on the last one, I'll do slope-intercept here. Y is 0. My slope is 2/3. My x is 7. 0 is 14 over 3 plus b. We subtract it over. And b is -14 over 3. So my final answer is y equals 2/3 x minus 14 over 3. Again, this is not everything you need to know for your test, but it's just some helpful hints.